pleased and delighted and honoured that our first speaker is Chan Kin-man, who was educated in a number of places, has a doctorate in the social sciences and sociology from Yale University. Someone who played a very important role in the foundation of Occupy Central campaign to strive for universal suffrage without restriction in Hong Kong, and who told me this morning that once upon a time he was a very moderate Democrat and now is much less moderate. Chan Kin-man, welcome, and we look forward to
Let me say a few words first, then I'll do the video. Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to share our experience in this movement. I'm particularly thankful to Professor John Kint and also Mr. Chun Jing for bringing us, not just me, but also the student leaders to Sydney. I was a bit worried 2 weeks ago when I witnessed that how Joseph Wong was not allowed to go to Malaysia just to discuss about our movement and also something about June 4. But yesterday, in fact, Alice and I didn't encounter any problem when we went through the immigration, but Lester Sum was questioned by those immigration officers for more than half an hour. I'm not sure why it happened to him. Probably you are the most prominent leader in the movement. But I just hope that your government understands that we are not a bunch of criminals. In fact, we are just people fighting for some human right shared by both Australian and also Hong Kong people. That is freedom, democracy, and justice. Before I start my presentation, I would also like to show a video clip for just 3 minutes. As long as a mandate from the public was sought, deliberation and a civil referendum would be the procedures adopted to resolve conflict among the opposition party and to solicit consensus from the communities. So this picture about our deliberation date. As a moderate and radical Democrat held very different viewpoint concerning the chief executive elections process, particularly regarding the role of civil nomination of candidates. What we mean civil nomination, in fact, it is a system used by Taiwan. That is, a certain number of registered voters should be eligible to nominate a candidate for the election of the president in the case of Taiwan. In Hong Kong, that is our chief executive. But it is very controversial among the pan-Democrats. People like the students and more radical political group, they insist in having this kind of system introduced in Hong Kong. But according to our constitution, I mean the basic law, we got to have a nominating committee responsible to nominate candidates. So because of this, how to bridge the idea of public nomination and the nominating committee prescribed by the basic law is a very difficult question, have to be resolved among the pan-Democrats. Our organization, I mean OCLP, relies on a civil referendum to select a reform proposal for the movement, deeply influenced by the German philosopher Habermas' theories of the public sphere and the deliberative democracy, and the concept of deliberation day advocated by US scholars such as Bruce Ackerman and James Fiskind. The OCLP founders initiated a series of deliberation days, what we call D-Day, to allow citizens to discuss matters related to constitutional reform in a rational manner before casting their vote in a referendum. These matters include the relevance of democracy, OCLP strategies, and a specific reform proposal. The first D-Day was held on June 9, 2013, when 700 people gathered at the University of Hong Kong to participate in the historic assembly. Most participants were members of the opposition parties and civil society organizations. Before attaining D-Day, they could go to a website to view the article expressing divergent views concerning OCLP's demand for an election method that met international standards of universal suffrage. For instance, other than one person, one vote, there should be no unreasonable restrictions blocking people from different political backgrounds from standing for elections. These discussions of what constitutes genuine universal suffrage was pertinent because the basic law, the Mini Constitution of Hong Kong, stipulates the establishment of a nominating committee to screen candidates for chief executive elections. OCLP argued that unless the constitution or the formation of the nominating committee was truly broadly representative, or the threshold for nominations was sufficiently low, the committee would become an obstacle to free election. D-Day 1 began with an open section like this, allowing participants to express their views. It was then followed by breakout sections in which randomly formed groups of a dozen more participants, led by moderators responsible for maintaining fair discussion procedures, discussing the very issues concerned. So this is the breakout sections in the deliberation date. All groups members, regardless of their positions, were given equal time to express their view. The result of the breakout sections were then reporting back to our closing sections. The first D-Day was deemed successful, not just because of the satisfactory turnout, but also because moderates and radical Democrats discussed political issues in a rational manner. One of the suggestions made during D-Day 1 was to bridge the idea of democracy with the concerns of different sectors of civil society. So therefore, in D-Day 2, we organized different sections in different communities. Here are pictures of the series of deliberation day in different communities. That one is a deliberation day among university students. You will find, Alice is over there. And then this one is, this guy is the hedge fund guy. So this is a deliberation day held by a group of, central people, what we call central people. They are people in the finance sectors. They give very good support to our movement because we always accused of creating disruptions in the financial center. But then a group of, experts in these kind of people who are from the finance sector express very strong support to our movements. So it's very important. And this is a pictures about a group of, workers. They are from very grassroots communities, having a deliberation day under a footbridge. So in different communities, we have this kind of deliberation. This is a picture taken from a church. This one is a deliberation day held by a group of radical, what they call socially actions. So we have deliberation day in different communities, including even clinical ill patient. So this is the D-Day 2. In fact, it is a series of deliberation. It lasted for around 3 months. And D-Day 3 was held in 5 different locations simultaneously on May 6, 2014. More than 2,500 citizens deliberated on the 15th reform proposal selected by a group of international experts invited by Hong Kong U School of Law. At the end of the day, participants selected 3 proposals to be considered by the public in the upcoming civil referendum. The selection process was controversial, with some of the radical opposition party mobilizing D-Day participants to select only those proposals with provisions for public nominations, that is, those specifying a certain number of registered voters could nominate candidates. Moderate Democrats criticized these provisions as a violation of basic law and a measure that will not be accepted by Beijing. So they also complained that OCLP movement had been hijacked by radicals and that the selection process on D-Day 3 was exactly the kind of political screening that people opposed to the democracy movements was split against. So this is the D-Day 3. So after the deliberation, people have to vote, and then at the end, these are the three selected proposals. The highest vote went to the proposal made by the students. Okay. Now I turn to the stage about a referendum. The moderate, particularly Hong Kong 2020, led by former senior government official Mrs. Anson Chan, were dissatisfied with the poll result. Mrs. Chan criticized the upcoming civil referendum, saying that it could not offer people a genuine choice of proposal without a provision for public nominations, because any proposal without, a provision of public nomination was not selected in the deliberation date. So that's why he criticized it. Students and radicals counter-attacked, accusing her of being out of touch with the masses. Well, when the movement was on the verge of collapse, Cardinal Joseph Chan played a critical role in rebuilding solidarities. He urged both sides to stop attacking each other, while OCLP worked on a remedial solution. Finally, OCLP added an additional motion to the referendum to encourage those who did not support public nomination to take place. The motion is that the Legislative Council should veto any proposed election method violating international standards of universal suffrage that failed to provide voter genuine choice. Consensus then started to be built. The three OCLP founders pledged to step down from leadership of the movement if they failed to draw 100,000 voters to the referendum. Cardinal Chan, together with OCLP and other political groups, immediately organized a democracy march to take place for 7 consecutive days and nights to promote the referendum across Hong Kong. The march was successful in conveying a strong message of solidarities with Mrs. Anson Chan and other leaders of the Democratic camp, urging people to vote in the referendum while marching through various communities. The Chinese central government issued a white paper on the implementation of one country, two systems immediately before the democracy march, proclaiming China overall jurisdictions over Hong Kong. In Chinese, the term was written as overall administrative power. 全面的管理权, 他用这个字, and was understood as a move undermining the high degree of autonomy that Hong Kong people enjoys. Well, since the white paper also referred judges in Hong Kong as administrators, a number of lawyers joined a silent march to express their worries over the issue of independent judiciaries. Well, the next picture shows you what problem we encounter in our civil referendum. This is civil referendum because this is not a referendum organized by the government. It's organized by OCLP. Before the referendum was taken place, we encountered very serious hackers attack. These pictures show the origins of this attack. It mainly came from, where are they? United States, China, and even Taiwan. So they have different computers, installed in different parts of the world, and then attack. The target, of course, is Hong Kong. It's our computer, of course. And it was world-class attack. Immediately after this world-class attack, all the local computer security company decided to withdraw from our project. They said that they didn't have any capacity to handle attack of this kind. Fortunately, a US-based company named as Cloudflare decided to defend our system to the end. In fact, we started to negotiate with Google. If they failed to do so, Google will come in And I guess because they want to, maintain their family, the company brand name, they really fought to the end. And fortunately, well, in fact, just a few minutes before we started the referendum, we were not sure about whether the system could work. So once it started to work, in the first few minutes, we already found that thousands of voters scrambled into our system. Many people burst into tears at that moment. So most of the people, in fact, use telephone to vote in our referendum. But some people, particularly those older people who don't use smartphones, will line up in our polling station in different communities to vote. At the end, it's 800,000 people participate in this civil referendum out of 7 million Hong Kong people. It was historical. Okay, so at the end, 800,000 people vote, and the proposal selected was a proposal which allowed different channel of nominations, public nominations, party nomination, as well as nomination through the nominating committee, as long as the nominating committee is broadly representative. So at the end, people choose a more flexible proposal submitted to the government. And also 88% of voters also agree that if at the end the government didn't give Hong Kong people a proposal that could meet international standard, the Legislative Council should vote down on it. So these are the results of the referendum. But immediately after the referendum, we encounter Beijing's backlash. Armed with the mandates granted by the referendum, OCLP immediately contacted the Hong Kong government, hoping that a meeting could be held to kickstart the negotiation process. The government response was lukewarm at best, whereas the people of Hong Kong were more eager than ever to express the demand for democracy. Around 500,000 people I'm talking about, joined the annual July 1st rally organized by the Civil Human Rights Fund to demand genuine universal suffrage. Despite OCLP objections, more than 500 college students and other citizens stayed behind after the rally to trial run Occupy Central by sitting down on the main road in Central. It constitutes a sign of young people impatience with OCLP plan to treat occupation as a last resort. They argue that only by occupying the city as soon as possible would sufficient pressures be placed on Beijing when it considered reform proposals. The government then released a consultation paper on consultation report on constitutional reform depicting the demand for public nomination as a view held by some people only, and pro-government viewed as mainstream opinion of Hong Kong. When representatives of the Hong Kong government finally met with the 3 OCLP founders on July 29, they condemned the Occupy movement as a violation of law and reiterated that Beijing would not yield to threats of this kind. On August 31st, 2014, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress in Beijing made a decision known as the 831 decisions that basically rule out the implementation of free election in Hong Kong. The decision laid down 3 significant hurdles to democracy. The constitution of the nominating committee would be modeled on the existing election committee. The existing election committee is constituted by only 1,200 people. And they were elected by around 250,000 Hong Kong people out of 7 million Hong Kong people. They are mainly business people, professional people, and also pro-Beijing politicians. So it is a very restricted, with a very restricted franchise. So we always call it a small circle election. Now the nominating committee has to model on this election committee. So we believe that it is too restricted, and we believe that it is not acceptable. And second, only 2 to 3 candidates will be nominated by this nominating committee. And also, 50% of nominating committee members will have to agree on any candidate. So the threshold is very high. So we believe that it will be strictly under control by Beijing and believe that it is unacceptable. So immediately we have a demonstration, we have a rally on the evening when Beijing announced these decisions. And then umbrella movement. I will leave this part of umbrella movement to Alice and Lester to talk more about it. I will just briefly say that there are different versions of civil disobedience or resistance among the protesters. You know, for people like me, OCLP, we adopt very traditional civil disobedience ideas. You got to be peaceful. And people have to shoulder their legal responsibility at the end. So before the occupation, in fact, we OCLP announced several rules. And it was very controversial, particularly among young people. And you have to accept organized, directions from OCLP. People shouldn't wear masks. You have to shoulder your legal responsibilities. Don't wear masks, and you shouldn't fight with the police. You shouldn't have physical or verbal confrontation with the police, and so on and so forth. We have rules like this, announced before the occupation. So this picture, in fact, so very much the spirit of OCLP. This is at the very initial stage of the movement. When there was a heavy rain on one day, many protesters went to hold, umbrella for the policemen. So this spirit really demonstrates the idea of OCLP, idea of, civil disobedience. It's got to be civil. But this is only our idea. And students believe that they also uphold the idea of civil disobedience. They also believe in nonviolence. But they want something more proactive, more offensive. They believe that people like me, OCLP, was too weak, too passive. So they want something more offensive, but still they upheld the idea of nonviolence. Say, for example, they will build barricades to block the police deployment. They will confront the police, but they will raise their hand in order to show their commitment to nonviolence. But they will actively block road in order to stop the police from going into the occupation site. There was another group which was more radical than the student. They believe that it is not something civil disobedient. They would just regard it as kind of resistance or even kind of revolutions. So they believe that civil disobedience was too weak. So they even prefer violence. But fortunately, only one window was broken during the 79-day occupation. Only one window was broken, and no one followed suit. Those people, after they broke the window, they asked people to come in, and no one come in. So they have to come back and then stop the action. So sometimes it's too civilized, right? Only one window was broken. Anyway, for this group of people, they believe that it's a revolution. We got to be more confrontational and even have to consider violence. I will leave this to the student to discuss about it. I'm quite sure that student leaders like Alice and Lester were very much torn between moderate or conservative like me. I'm a conservative among these students, and also the radical who want them to be more confrontational or even violent. Anyway, because it is a very autonomous, I'm going to finish. Okay? It is a very autonomous movement. So it also unleashes a space for people to create a movement of our own. There are 4 ideas celebrated in the movement. First, equality. People were so equal. Everyone, if you have a loudspeaker, you can set up your forum to make speech. So it is very equal. And everyone who built a barricade, they have ownership of that barricade. People like OCLP or the student leader have to negotiate with them, have a deliberation day, sometime overnight, to discuss whether we should open up a barricade. So no one can make decision. You have to deliberate. So very equal. And also a lot of sharing, not just food, medicine, but also skill. Making handicraft, learning guitar in every corner, different corners of of the umbrella square. And there is also a recycling system immediately built up in the occupation site. I was immediately in tears when I saw young people. I thought that they are spoiled child. But suddenly when I found that they really, paid a lot of effort in cleaning up the place, building up a recycling system, I was very impressed by it. And there was a lot of art creation because people had such a strong sense of belonging of this movement. So they want to make it even more beautiful. So a lot of art creation was there. So before I finish, I have to talk about our future. In fact, many tourists from China came down to our square, to the occupation site, to take picture with Xi Jinping at that time. Many tourists, okay. It's a lovely, idea to bring Xi Jinping to the square, in fact. So what happened in the future, I don't know. The Hong Kong government is expected to submit a reform proposal to our Legislative Council for approval 2 weeks later. As Beijing is not about to change the 831 decisions, the proposal will likely to be vetoed by our democratic legislators. Even without democracy, Hong Kong can still operate because it is a very institutionalized society. We have an efficient civil service working according to rules and regulations, and an independent judiciary protecting basic human rights. That said, the government will find it difficult to implement any substantial reforms or controversial policies, as the present system does not provide it with sufficient legitimacies. When many deep-rooted problems, such as housing and monopoly, are not duly addressed, more social conflict will arise. There are also signs that the authority will step up their control over the ideological arena. In the wake of the occupation, a number of scholars and officials in Beijing conclude that the younger generation have been negatively influenced by liberal intellectuals like me in Hong Kong. Pro-Beijing newspaper in Hong Kong then attacked Hong Kong U for playing too prominent a role in the Occupy movement. Numerous scholars, including the author including me, have been accused of spreading harmful ideas. They also criticized Hong Kong U for considering the promotion of Professor Johanna Chen, former Dean of Hong Kong U Law School, and long-standing supporter of democracy, to Vice Chancellor of the university. At the secondary school level, pressure has been exerted on liberal studies, a subject designed to nurture student critical thinking ability. Finally, a number of Hong Kong's largest book chains, including Commercial Press, have refused to carry books supportive of the movement. A more imminent threat is the enactment of a national security law. Many pro-Beijing politicians resurrect the issues in the wake of the protests, reflecting their views that the umbrella movement was an act of subversion or even treason that only a national security law could prevent from happening again. Some even suggest that the direct application of China national security law in Hong Kong, as the government has already secured enough votes in Legislative Council to support the passage of Article 23, the national security law, Hong Kong people can only rely on civil society to stop it from happening. To face this challenge, civil society organizations must learn the lesson from the Occupy Central by overcoming their internal split and building a more coherent leadership together with the opposition parties. China is now the world's second superpower and relies less on Hong Kong than it did in the past. It is confident enough to say no to Hong Kong, but not confident enough to afford it democracy. China Parliament's leader Xi Jinping is still in the process of consolidating his power. Giving Hong Kong democracy would contradict his current approach to manage the countries. However, as China had yet to find a sustainable model of development, and the effectiveness of Xi's top-down approach to control corruption is questionable. The Chinese Communist Party will have to find more institutionalized means of tackling its pressing social problems. Otherwise, it will not be able to prevent the factional conflict within the parties and societal conflict in different regions accumulate to the point of the crack-up, recently predicted by David Shambu. Once China recognizes the importance of transparencies, accountabilities, public participations, procedural studies, and good governance, Hong Kong may have a better chance of attaining democracy. In order to capture these opportunities in the future, the Pan-Democrat needs to build a more coherent opposition and stronger leadership in the communities. Their role is particularly important when the rivalry among different wings of the students' movement have brought Federation of Students to the brink of disintegration. Regardless of these challenges, however, there is sign that the fight for democracy in Hong Kong will continue. In a recent survey, the community is split. Around 40-something% support the government proposal, and around 14% against the proposal. But among young people, talking about age between 18 to 29, 66% of young people against the government proposal. And among more educated people, people with university degree, around 60% also against the government proposal. So at the end, I would say at the end, so even though the umbrella movement didn't change the system immediately, it has already sowed the seed of democracy in the next generation. Thank you very much.